welcome to For Coven's Sake. This is a new podcast that we decided to do. We're going to introduce ourselves first because it's important for people to know who we are.
Exactly.
Right? So, who are you, Michael?
My name is Michael, and I am an initiate in the Alexandrian tradition. And I am also a high priest of a coven in New England in the United States. And I have been in the craft for more years than I want to admit to, getting rather old. However, as an initiate, I've been an Alexandrian now for about 7 years. For thereabouts.
7 years.
Yes.
Yeah. But you've been, it's important for people to know this because I think there is a distinction between being an initiate or the time that you were initiated and then until now to a time that you were initiated always in practice until now. Do you know what I mean? There is a difference between always saying that you are an initiate, but then you were actually an initiate always active because you were initiated into a coven. And you were always practicing the craft, right?
Absolutely. Correct, yes. So as an initiate, been practicing continuously for these last 7 years. Very different than before becoming an initiate, which most of it was very sort of self-taught, start off that way.
Me too. I was practicing in Portugal at the time before I was an initiate for quite some time. And almost, 12 years.
Look.
And in things, right? So you do so I went through, did you go through things like, I went through Druidism for a while. And then for me it was very important to go there. And then I went through a little bit of traditional witchcraft, which is a different thing from Portuguese, Lusitanian Portuguese witchcraft. And then that's always with me. And then I decided that actually traditional Wicca was actually my path. That's what I thought. You know what I mean? And then you have to just kind of take things a little bit, just focus on this one. Did that happen to you?
Absolutely. So my interest in the craft started back in the late 80s. And unlike you, I never went to a different sort of system or branch. I was always very much focused on witchcraft, but in various permutations. And that's really just, reading a lot of books. And then really exploring more traditional witchcraft and practicing it the best that I could alone, which is kind of counterintuitive. With, the Witch's Bible with Janet Stewart Farrer. And really doing that for many, many years, going to some open rituals, public rituals, which honestly I found very disappointing in many ways. And then finally, knowing very much that this was something I was very interested in, and then finally seeking a traditional coven in Alexandrian in particular. And wanting to be trained and become a priest, and that was certainly life-changing, and never looking back since then.
Right. But why specifically Alexandria?
Many reasons. I think the photographs really got me in many ways. Photographs of Alex and Maxine participating in their rituals. And I also like the layers that Alexandrian proposes, in the sense that, yes, it is the craft. However, the craft that also incorporates other systems of magic. And at the end of the day, yes, I'm an initiate, but I'm also an occultist. So I've read a lot of, Aleister Crowley, for example, lots of work in terms of ritual magic or high magic. And studied the Kabbalah. So I love the fact that Alex Sanders experimented with these other systems in the craft, which you don't see necessarily, speaking very generally, and probably maybe ignorantly, which you don't see necessarily in Gardnerian. So that is what attracted me to Alexandrian.
I'm sure there are Gardnerians who would work, with also other systems. I actually also it was the photographs. I think that the photographs, they were, I think, conscious of this at the time. You know, the photographs were a beacon to all of these people. Years. I mean, we're talking about like 13 years after Alex's death, or I wasn't born when they were in London. I was born the year after that.
Yes.
So, and they started in London.
Yep.
And so for me, this is like incredibly interesting to look at a photograph and said, I want to be this. I want to be doing this without knowing even what that was fully, because we don't really know. Unfortunately, this is a secret mystery tradition. You know, what people do in their covens is, you know, only pertains to the people in the coven. And of course, you know, not everybody, you know, a seeker can't come in and say, hey, I want to look and see if this is for me.
What's going on?
Right. Yeah. So for me, it was that. It was the pictures. It was Alex's and Maxine's pictures. And I said, I want to do this. I want to be this. I want to do what they're doing, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The magic is there, right? The magic is even if you know, as Maxine would say, you know, a lot of those pictures are staged. However, the magic still comes through it.
Yes. And I think that Janet and Stuart played also a very big role on this, because, you know, I'm thinking about What Witches Do, for instance, which is an incredible book that was basically themed after the activities of the coven, the first coven in London of Alex and Maxine. And that is, for me, was a very, very deeply decisive tome that actually said, I really want to do this.
Yes.
I really want to be, you know. And it's interesting because how did you find, because we all have different stories, how did you find your first coven? How did you get there? I mean, how did you go from, oh, this is very interesting, this photographs and all of this thing. How did you find them, or that person that initiated you, or that coven or that group? Because that's also, I think it's interesting to know for seekers if they're listening to us.
Hopefully they're listening to us. It took a long time. It really was a leap of faith and courage to actually contact a coven. And it was through a defunct website, Witchbox.
Oh, yes. I remember Witchbox.
Which was really a fantastic resource. And I live in New England. I'm not far away from Salem, Massachusetts. There are many witches, you know, witches practicing. But that was really the best vehicle to contact covens. And I sent an email to a coven that was rather local to me, and that's how it started. And it started with an email conversation, which I think a lot of it starts that way, to a phone call, or a couple of phone calls, talking with the high priest of that coven. And then finally, a couple of meetings out in public spaces, of course, have to be safe. And then a lot of really sort of good conversation and questions. And, you know, as a seeker, you don't know what questions to ask, because, yes, you may have read a lot of books, but it's also difficult to ask really informed questions of the group or group practice. And then what I also did is I vetted the person as well. So I wanted to know the people that person knew, just to make a good decision. And then after that, you know, after I would say a while went by, and then formally asked for initiation, which I was granted. So that was my journey. That's the way that I was able to contact a coven, and then realize once inside of a coven just how different and profound the craft is versus anything that you'll read in a published text or at any sort of public. I think public rituals have their place. I think they're important, but very, very different than public ritual. So that was my journey into my first coven. What about you, Karagan? How did you make?
Yeah, I actually, my story is a little different because I wasn't in the US. I wasn't near Salem, but I knew somebody, which then became later on my husband, Jamal DiFiosa. And he was the one who brought me into contact with the high priestess and the coven that I was initiated into. So I had to actually travel. When people say, I find it very interesting when people say, oh, 2 hours, that's too much. Sorry,
Yeah.
I can't make it. It's just, every Sabbath, really? I mean, 2 hours, it's a long, I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Right.
I had to travel thousands of miles
Yes, you did.
to do this. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
actually moved to the
Yeah.
United States to pursue the craft and to actually be there. And of course, he was to be with my husband and all of that. But I think it's very important for people to understand that sometimes distance is relative. When there is a will, there is a way. And if you do want this, then you will be able to find a way to get there. So that was it. And then I traveled, and then I actually moved to, and then I was trained in that coven. This is very interesting because we're actually pinpointing a couple of things here that are very useful, I think, to people that want to ask for initiation. How was your timing between the first and the second and third?
The first, the second, and third. So I just want to I also want to make a comment about what you said in terms of traveling great distances. And I think as Alexandrians, right, this is a vocation to priesthood. And when it truly is a vocation, you will travel, right? You will travel those distances to become part of the priesthood. It really is a calling. And for me, so the distance between my first degree and second and third were about 3 or 4 years. And I did not receive second and third from my initiatory coven. So I left my first coven because I wanted to seek and this is, we'll probably get into this later, and just in terms of lines within the tradition. And I wanted to seek training really based on the teachings of Maxine Sanders in the Temple of the Mother. And that is when I had left my first coven, which didn't really adhere to that sort of form, and sought another coven. So yours, Karagan.
Yeah.
And the
Surprise, everyone!
Surprise twist. So plot twist, I should say. And yes, and the Queensberry line, and it was really like coming home, honestly, with your coven and your leadership and training. And so it was about 4 years between first and then my second and my third degree.
Mine was a little bit more quick, and the reason why it was quick is because we lived above the Covenstead. So basically, every day I was in the Covenstead. Do you see what I mean? So it was, for me, it was like that. So it was not that long. I think it was like a year of distance between a year and something between the first and then the second and third.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, before that, I had extensive, research. I think that it's one of the very interesting things here, and I think that it's very important for seekers to know. It's the extensive research. Research what it is. Read books. Not all of the books are good, but some of the books are, and there are some books that are very good that you can actually get information from, and see what more or less what you can get into before you even choose where you want to go. But then again, you said it's not really. It's much more profound when you get into, the coven, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because so much is taught, right? So much is taught orally, as well as we are a mystery cult, and one must practice, right? You must practice to experience the mysteries, right? And I think that is really something one doesn't get, right, from a book or following, those prescribed rituals that are inside of a book, for example.
Right.
So it really does change in that way.
Right. Yeah. And I think that for me, there was a couple of factors, right? So there is Mike Ovenstead was there, then Jamal was a known author, then he met Maxine, and then I met Maxine, and then we developed a relationship from then, and then everything unfolded. But
Yeah.
it was very interesting to know these things because I think that our example and other examples as well can guide people today. I mean, I didn't have podcasts when I was searching for this,
Yeah.
I had books.
Yeah, books.
And people were not sharing their experience. So I think it's very important for us to, I mean, not as an example, but at least we can guide people towards, hey, this book is good. Or, one of the things that we want to talk about now is actually the structure of this podcast, for Coven's sakes. And it has to be talked about. So we're going to have interviews, right? So we're going to have interviews with people. Yeah. And people that are, that could be significant or interesting, hopefully they would be interesting. How horrible it is when you have like and I had guests that were really boring. But we're going to try to bring you interesting people. And then we have a very interesting segment, which is the Veiled Priestess.
I love this.
Yes. So the Veiled Priestess is a priestess that comes into the podcast, and she comes in every 3 episodes, and no names. So she is a mystery, and as it should be. And she comes to not only balance the podcast with her beauty and wisdom, but also she brings in a couple of points that she wants to make on the previous 3 episodes, and she will be talking with us about them. So I think that it's a very interesting, so it's called the Veiled Priestess. Nobody knows who she is.
I love, yes, just the voice.
Yes. Yeah. And that's basically it. We might have books. We might discuss books as well, so that people can have something to read. I think it's important. And then we're going to go also and have discussions about, things that we think that it's helpful for people to know, or to actually talk about those things will help people to guide them towards whatever they want to go.
Exactly. Yes, it's important to have a good resource for seekers.
And that's one of the things that I didn't have. Did you have that? I didn't.
I did not. I had no guidance whatsoever. It was the blind leading the blind, honestly.
Yes.
Maybe.
And the thing is, I think, sometimes you can kind of guide people towards, and kind of like ward them against some of the dangers that nowadays, there's so many covens, and there's so many initiates that there are unfortunate circumstances, and we can, as best as we can, ward people against it, but or how to look for the signs of those things that we should avoid. But
exactly. There are real pitfalls.
There are.
In the craft.
Yeah. And so was your approach to the coven that you had a little bit secret? Like, did you feel this atmosphere of secrecy, or was it a little bit more open? Because at the time when I was in Portugal, and I had a contact with a high priestess at the time, it was very much secret. Everything was secret. Oh, we don't talk about that. Oh, we don't really, do you feel this or not? Even in the initial approach?
I did. I did feel that it was secret. I did feel that it was veiled. And I also felt that it was really subversive. This was really sort of counter culture. And when initiated and going to ritual, the same. It felt very secret. And I think that's one of the lures of the craft, at least for me. And I believe in it. I believe in secrecy as well.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that it's very difficult for us in terms of history, it's to actually know things because we can't. In a religion that is a mystery religion, a mystery tradition, it is very difficult to know what actually happened because the only people that know this were the people that were there. Because there's secret. That all we do is secret. It's done in privacy, and we don't really have that. So it's so difficult to put together, things because it's difficult to know what happened.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And I felt that because, as you know, I have a book that it's coming out, which is called The Inner Circle, and in there's I kind of talk about a little bit of the history, but it's difficult to talk about history of a mystery tradition that, of people that were there. What happened in that group? We don't know. We weren't part of it, right? But there's dates, there's years, but then again, we don't know who was there, or how many people were there, or if that person was there or not, or, it's quite difficult to determine these things, I think.
Absolutely. And this is history, right? Historically speaking, in terms of any mystery cult, we can go all the way back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome or ancient Mesopotamia, right? We don't know what happened in these religions, and witchcraft is very much that way. At least the Alexandrian tradition, very much that way.
Yeah. It's difficult to know, but we do our best. We do our best. So wonderful to be here with all of you listening to us. We are going to close this introduction, and we'll be back on with the next episode about something that we don't even know because we're very secretive. No, we're going to announce what it will be. You will see it. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about right now is how to contact us. We do have a Instagram account, so we're going to use only that to communicate with people. So if you really want to know and actually talk to us via Instagram, you can, because we have an account called For Coven's Sake. So you can go there. Also, we're going to be on, and that's where we are right now, on Spotify. And in Spotify, on our own page, you can actually send messages to us. Sound bites, questions if you want. And we will play it if that's the case. So just leave us 1 minute. It's, I think, the limit. 1 minute. So don't give us a testament. Just 1 minute. And that's it. And a question, a comment, whatever you want to leave, and that will be great. And so we will be in touch over the dedicated page For Coven's Sake in Spotify as well. And then, of course, we're going to go into other podcast platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, etc. But our main home will be Spotify, and we'll be there waiting for you for 1 minute.
Excellent.
That's it. Thank you very much for listening to us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Goodbye.